Welcome to episode 1 of Maybe It Resonates. I'm your host, Joe. This is my first podcast and the first episode. It's something I've talked about for many years. I'm going to be covering a number of different subjects, but I'll be talking today about my experiences with mania and psychosis. Just to give you a bit of background information, I was diagnosed with bipolar in 2021. I was sectioned and hospitalised in late 2021, late 2023 and late 2024. Not for particularly long periods of time, weeks each time. I was given a bipolar diagnosis during my first hospital stay. Pretty much as soon as my ex-wife told the psychiatrist on the ward that my dad was diagnosed bipolar as well. I've also been diagnosed very recently with ADHD. They've given me a diagnosis of combined type, so ADHD / what used to be known as ADD. And I'm currently waiting for an autism screening as well. I've been pre-screened twice, scored very highly in both of those pre-screenings, and hopefully in the next couple of months I will get my actual screening and my diagnosis. I self-identify as autistic now anyway, and have done for quite some time. There's a lot of autism in my family already diagnosed. And it kind of accepting that, it's just taught me so much about myself, kind of realising that that's what's been going on for me my whole life. And the ADHD diagnosis, I've kind of joked about having ADHD for at least a decade now, really. So again, I self-identify as ADHD, but I have been actually rubber stamped for that. So we've got kind of a trifecta there of bipolar, autism and ADHD for me. I'm going to talk about my experiences. I view them very differently. I'm starting to view them through less of a clinical lens. There's a huge crossover between these things. And these disorders, as they call them, I don't like that word personally, because you're kind of tearing yourself apart. If this bit's of me this, if this bit's of me that, am I a person with this or am I this person? We should all kind of self-identify as we see fit, I believe. And I'd like to just say that I'll always be talking from I when I speak here. These are all my opinions. I may not say I think, I feel. I used to get in lots of trouble for not speaking like that, but it's just not how I speak. I'm not writing essays, I'm just speaking. So I don't know if that's going to rub anyone up the wrong way, but just assume, or please work on the assumption that I've said I think and I feel. All views and opinions are my own. I haven't got a script for this. I'm just probably going to talk about kind of how I've come to understand this, again through my own personal lens, and maybe that will resonate with other people, or maybe even just someone. And when I've kind of come across, mainly from books, occasionally podcasts, when trying to understand all this stuff, someone saying something that resonates with me, I feel very kind of seen and heard and validated. There's a lot of invalidation in these fields, in the mental health field and the medical field especially. I also have Crohn's disease, but I've been in remission for a long time. I turned to alternative medicine, to be honest, when sort of the traditional medicine wasn't working for me. But we'll talk about that in another podcast, because that might be of interest to people. So I don't know the best way to sort of talk about this with you, if I should kind of start here and now and work retroactively, or start kind of at the beginning. It's hard to know which of those will work best. So let's start with my current sort of revelations or understandings of self, I've kind of been reframing, certainly after my ADHD diagnosis and kind of the high pre-screen for autism, that a lot of what I'd pathologised historically to be bipolar after getting the diagnosis was very much an interplay between ADHD and autism. I've never been hypermanic per se. I've had periods of intense focus, or hyperfocus as they call it, in my special interests, but I've always been sleeping well. There wasn't sort of loads of grandiosity around that or anything like that, or boundless energy. A lot of energy because I was into something and happy and excited and working on something. But I had overly pathologized my past there. And I've come to understand kind of what has been classed as mania and psychosis with my episodes. I just refer to them as episodes now because there's so many constituent parts to these and what's going on in the moment. That episode is nice. It's a nice umbrella for me to sort of conceptualize things. They've always been preceded by huge amounts of stress, like through the roof stress, and lots of cannabis use as well. I used to use cannabis a lot to help with my anxiety, primarily, and I used it as kind of an anti-inflammatory for my Crohn's. But I think the anti-anxiety effect of it kind of reduced my stress, and that kept my body healthier. But I was also, in the past, engaging in a lot of meditation. I was going through a lot in life, really, lots of work stress. I had to give up my day job due to my Crohn's disease. I started working for myself, took over a project that wasn't really paying me any income, but would do when it was finished. So I had a lot of stress around not really being able to provide for the family, kind of on the day to day. It was all like, once this is done, it's going to all pay off. And that just kind of destroyed me. I was getting a lot of kind of kickback for my choices, being told, I don't know why you don't get a normal job like me. And it's just like, I've given up my normal job because I couldn't do it anymore because my body's failing. This is before I was in remission. I had a bowel resection, essentially. They chopped a big load of my guts out, which took me a long time to recover from, and I was still very much recovering from that at the time. I used to do a lot of martial arts historically as well. That was kind of one of my coping mechanisms just for life and stress. And due to ill health, I had to stop that. I think doing jiu-jitsu, knee on belly, actually split my guts. That's what ended me up in the hospital, kind of in big trouble, to be honest. So I just stopped, and I was so fatigued. I lost lots and lots of weight, couldn't eat, stuck on the toilet all the time. Had 2 young children then. My wife at the time reached the end of her tether with me, and everything just collapsed, and I had a mental collapse. I found myself kind of, I don't really want to put her down, but she did rip into me, and there was a lot of character assassination. So I lost my identity, and then I lost kind of my wife and children and my home for a period, and then lost my mind. But I was probably starting to lose my mind before that due to excessive cannabis use, and just stress. And I was doing a lot of meditation as well to try and make sense of everything, and kind of, how do I fix this relationship and stop messing up. And I think the meditation kind of uncorked a lot of unconscious trauma for me, things that had been frozen in time. I became aware of the concept of structural dissociation a few years afterwards, which put a lot of things in context. The whole idea that the self becomes fragmented when, if you think of your life as a timeline from A to Z, if something traumatic happens along that timeline, you as you are then, or me as I was then, got frozen in time. So it was like a frozen personality. Whole aspects of myself would become locked away from me. My memories, my likes and dislikes, how I identified myself. And due to repeated traumas, there was kind of lots of these fracturings and lots of these frozen parts of me. And frozen roles in many ways. When I was 19, I met a girl who had a young son, who was 1 year old at the time. And I moved in with her pretty quickly. She asked me to become a dad for her child. Is it all right if, I can't remember how she phrased it. Will you be his dad? I think it was as simple as that. And I said, yes, of course. So I built this whole kind of dream life in my head. I was very much a loser at the time. My dad had only really given me praise for being intelligent. I got criticised a lot for what I now realise was ADHD behaviour. I just couldn't contain myself. And I'd get a beating for performing. But I eventually learned to lock everything inside, so I became an imploder, really. So I was having, I think, well, in hindsight, autistic internal meltdowns quite a lot. And anyway, that relationship lasted about 2.5 years. We were engaged to be married, trying for another baby at the time. And it ended quite suddenly, at least for me. And a lot of it was my fault. I was being, I was very insecure. I'd kind of been modelled poor partner behaviour by my dad, so I was unconsciously doing that and arguing a lot. I was never violent or anything like that, but I had a nasty tongue if I was triggered. So yeah, I've got a lot of regrets over the side I played in all that. But in hindsight, we were both very traumatised. And there was a lot of trauma bonding between us. But it was my first sort of real deep love. And the first time I had kind of dared to dream, really. I'd left my family home and I could see a future. I wanted to be a provider. So I got a job and we came off benefits. So we were paying for, my wages were covering kind of all the bills and the rent and everything. Didn't leave us with much money. Things were very tight. But I was determined to sort of continue my education, get a degree, get a decent job. But it all kind of fell apart before that happened. I started in a garage. That was my first job, and then got a job kind of while I was at college, being a graphic designer, and then sort of transitioned to being a web designer. And I was still doing that when things kind of came to an end. But I've realised now in hindsight that kind of the parental part of me got frozen in time. A lot of the part of me that enabled me to connect to my children, because I viewed that son as my child at the time. That might sound really weird, I don't know, but that's just how things were. And if we'd have had another child, they would have both been equal in my eyes. But I was very insecure, and I think his dad wanted to come back on the scene to spend time with him now and again, and I felt very threatened by that. I was only a kid. I was still a teenager when we met. But yeah, when we split up, I was so destroyed that a lot of me froze. Kind of a whole self got locked up, really. My ability to sort of love deeply, my ability to connect as a father, not that I had any children of my own at that point, and having my own children kind of brought up a lot of that frozen trauma as well. And I think in some ways, as hard as it is for me to admit now, it made it very difficult in some ways for me to connect emotionally to my own children. Because when I tried, I kind of emotionally connected to her son as well on some level. So it was just a bit of a minefield for me. Not that I wasn't emotionally connected to my children, I certainly was, and certainly am now. Because of these parts of me have been I've been forced to integrate them. But kind of when this was in 2015, things went awry with my wife. The part of me that dealt with the loss of my fiance back then and let's call him my stepson, came back online, because it's the way I understand it, from things I've read and just from personal experience. It's just like an overwhelming trauma in the moment again. I've lost my wife, I've lost my children, I can't cope with this. It's unbearable, I literally want to die. And then you think, or something in you says, I can't die because I've got children and people that care about me. I'm not going to abandon them. So you're caught in this almost paradox of needing to not exist to stop the pain, but not being able to not exist because you'll cause pain to others. And then the defense mechanisms kick in. In this case, mania, for me, is kind of my first defense mechanism that kicks in. The grandiosity, the inflated sense of self, the sense of purpose, and there is a sort of an emotional detachment that comes with that as well. And almost, I wouldn't say empathy goes, but lots of areas of empathy goes, like the empathy for your partner and your children and your almost connection to them becomes generalised. This is in my experience. And when I'm speaking, I'm always speaking from I. So I'm not going to say I think, I feel. That's just, please assume that that's how I'm talking always. So this has been just kind of how I've understood mania. I've read all the textbook stuff from the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which in my opinion is a medical textbook for insurance companies. So if it's in the DSM, insurance in America will cover it. So things have to be very categorised, and all these different categories for this disorder, that disorder, so personality disorders, psychological disorders. But people are kind of very nuanced. We're not in a box or two boxes or three boxes. There's kind of all these crossover between all these different things, including the autism and the ADHD side of things. And I've come to believe that kind of the mania is also fueled by the ADHD. It's like I go into sort of super ADHD mode, like I was when I was a kid and I was bouncing off the walls at school, before I learned to sort of contain myself through being punished. Not by parental figures, just by the system. I was in trouble all the time at school, and then when I was bouncing around too much, I'd get in trouble for that. So you'd learn to sit still all the time, but then I couldn't, the attention had to go, so I'd have to look out the window and daydream. So I always felt like I was doing something wrong. Lots of people probably can relate to that. School reports could really do well if he or she applied themselves, and they'd stop daydreaming. But I've got a rich internal world, as many of the people like me have, and I like that a lot. So yeah, I think there is definitely an interplay between ADHD and mania. Certainly if we start to look at the sort of the endogenous chemical processes that are at play there, sort of the chemicals produced in the body, it's the body is capable of producing stimulant-like chemicals, adrenaline, for instance, norepinephrine, and while your body is in that defense mode, using mania as a defense to sort of protect you. In my case, I don't know if this is the same from other people, protect you from self-destruction, complete annihilation. This chemical loop is continuing. The brain or the mind is getting the brain to signal via enzymes, peptides, whatever, which then downstream kick off a process where more of these stimulant chemicals are produced, and there's a loop going on then. It's like it's stuck in a feedback loop. The dilated pupils, for instance, you've only got to look at someone who's taken cocaine or meth, and you see that there's these chemicals being produced inside the body. They don't need to be external. But when you're in that manic state, you're looking to escape, aren't you? So there's often a draw to let's do lots of external chemicals. Let's get some exogenous stimulants in us as well, which just seems to make it worse and worse and worse. And I think that can be something that kickstarts the psychosis, certainly for me. Again, I haven't spoken to many people at length about their own experiences. A lot of this has come through introspection and sort of self-discovery. I'm hoping that one of the things this podcast will do is foster some sort of community. I'm not going to focus on just this stuff. I've got lots of interests to do with technology and science and spirituality and healing and wellness, and even the nature of reality. That's another one of my big interests. But this is something I'm very much going through at the moment. A lot of people I love are going through similar things. So there's a kind of a big driver there for me to understand, not from sort of just a self perspective, which can be viewed as sort of self-absorbed and selfish at times, but I have a duty to understand what happened, why, and how, and all those questions. So I'm very much immersed in the study of this, both on a personal level and obviously reading a lot about it. So in terms of my framing of my own experiences, mania kind of saves me in the moment. It's kind of like it shoots you out of that, oh God, I need to stop existing. As like a temporary reprieve. You can't exist in that state forever. Or maybe you can, but I couldn't, because people around me kind of are trying to snap you back to reality. You're kind of all brakes are off at that point. And it's becoming apparent to you that this isn't the answer, that you're just making things worse. And then the psychosis starts to kick in. It's like the changing of the self has reached its limit in saving you from absolute annihilation. So your mind then almost constructs another reality. It kind of remodels the world and how you perceive it, as what they would call the psychotic experience, as like a second defense mechanism, a sort of layer 2 of protection from self-annihilation. And at that point, if you've got people around you, it's quite clear that you are in a different world. There's a lot of trauma comes uncorked at this point, because whatever's triggered this initial, for me, layer one mania defense, something scared me, or triggered me, or I feared loss, or I've experienced loss and it's too much. It's become existential, this fear. So there's this whole fear thing going on, and when you're manic, in my experience at least, you're not aware of that. Kind of fear bounces around and butts up against you, but there's a lot of kind of, you're elevated above that. But when the psychosis kicks in, the fear for me certainly is intensified. Even things I've been dissociated from, like in the moment when someone threatens you years ago when you're young, and you just think nothing of it and you shrug your shoulders. It's like another part of you has really been scared. So that pops back up. It's like all this unresolved stuff that's, again, frozen in time or frozen in you, arises because the psychosis, the need for the restructuring of reality to save the self, has opened all these doors. It's had to sort of bust through the doors of perception into the kind of the unconscious mind. Well, that's kind of, it's not the doors of perception, it's the doors of introception, maybe. So all this stuff is coming out, old identities, and I experienced a lot of age regression during this, and I've come to understand that, again, it's like the mind thinks, I don't know how to deal with this current situation, but when I was this age, I experienced something slightly similar and I survived it. So the mind warps back, the whole self almost warps back to then, and I find my memories are like whatever was happening then was yesterday. It's just weird. I've got this whole kind of other frozen in time part of me. My tastes change. I think there's probably almost like an interplay between borderline personality disorder and dissociative identity disorder, from my reading of those. But these parts of me are conscious. It's just like a different suit of armour. Like a frozen part of the psyche has become unlocked. And reading about this has been very interesting. I'm still very much trying to make sense of it, but I've got to the point now where I understand these things are, in my own personal experiences, again, defense mechanisms against annihilation. I don't like the whole framing of psychosis. I don't like the word, it's too clinical. It's got the word psycho in it. Again, this will be my autistic self being very word-centered. I take things very literally in terms of words and their meaning. And I view psychosis as a process. I would like to come up with some other more friendly word for it, but we'll use psychosis at the moment because that's the word the clinical people use. And it's got a start point, for me, in my experience, with what I've sort of a trauma trigger, which is the A of the psychosis. It doesn't have to be a set moment in time like a finger click. It could be a gradual phasing in, sort of a loss of your attachment to consensus reality into sort of this subjective personal reality that saves you. Sometimes this layer 2 defense is layer 1, so the psychosis can come without the mania. It depends on, I think, the situation, the type of trauma trigger and what the mind has used before as a defence or protection, and whether that's worked or not in a specific scenario or a like scenario. And again, from A to Z through the psychotic process, it may end suddenly with a sudden snap back to consensus reality, which I've had. And I've also had people pull me back. So I've snapped back for a period, which I think is, from what I've read, is very atypical for psychosis, which is what makes me think it's my autistic mind creating new realities as a defence. It's kind of a, I don't know, like a mega meltdown almost, where my whole world has melted down. And then I snap back to reality and I'm normal, completely. I'm my normal self. And then I realised, oh my God, all the problems that my mind was running away from really do exist, and I need to get annihilated or whatever. I can't exist. I've messed everything up too much. Life is too ruined. I can't handle this. I'm going to melt down. I'm going to go crazy. And then boom, you snap back into that same psychotic state. It's like a coin flip or a light switch for me. But my experience is where I've been. I had this manic psychotic experience in 2015, and I was lucky enough to have a friend accompanying me through it. I obviously had other people involved in my life, but he was kind of there as a constant for me, and he walked me through. He didn't try and pull me out of it. He didn't invalidate my experience. He just supported me, and then I kind of gradually phased out of it and became normal again. And had not really any ill effects. And a similar thing happened in 2021, again, brought on by a rupture with my wife, her terminating the relationship, me losing my home and my children, and my life effectively, which is just, again, this whole existential end of the world stuff. And again, I'm like, I can't handle this, I need to not exist. So mania kicks in, and it's like, elevates the self. Okay, we're fine, we can deal with this. And as I was saying before, it looks back to, as I mentioned, this period when I was sort of 22, when that first big relationship had fractured and I'd lost my fiance and stepson at the time, and my home and my kind of life and the life I dreamed for the future. I wasn't annihilated by that. The me that was shut up and frozen in time, but I continued to exist. So the mind at that point in 2021 zips back to that, almost wakes up that frozen part and says, right, you've dealt with this before, dude. Come online now and see us through. So I literally feel like I'm 22 again. My tastes change. The friends that I haven't seen since I was 22, I gravitate towards. All my feelings for that ex come back online like it was yesterday we split up. I'm immediately completely attached to her son again, who I still think in my mind is the age he was when I was 22. So this is completely discombobulating for me, and I'm sharing this experience with kind of my family. My wife was kind of around at the time, and I was trying to sort of explain what was going on. She wanted to kind of like sort things out at that point, but I was gone. I'm not who you expect me to be, kind of in my 40s. I am 22 again. I know who you are, but I don't know you, almost. There's no connection to you. I can remember our time together and everything, but there is no connection to any of that. I am connected to everything I was connected to when I was 22. And I could articulate this it-ish at the time. I knew what I was feeling, but I don't know. And I was acting obviously like a complete lunatic due to this kind of chemical loop I'm stuck in to maintain this. And I've come to believe, I've been studying sort of the chemicals produced in the brain, chemicals related to serotonin, things that bind to the 5-HT2A receptors, like the prospect of endogenous dimethyltryptamine, DMT, playing a part in psychosis. They've done, this is a long time ago, I think it was in the 70s, studies on patients in mental hospitals experiencing psychosis, where they've tested their urine for dimethyltryptamine and they've only found trace amounts in it. But DMT is broken down by an enzyme called monoamine oxidase, which exists in the gut. So that kind of breaks DMT down into something else that's not psychoactive. And DMT has been suggested to play a part in dreaming. They believe, they've shown that the pineal gland in rats releases DMT, and they've also shown that, I think in mammals in general now, it's been a while since I've read about this, like the lungs produce DMT as well, and the brain in general. But if they've got systems where they can sort of monitor the rat's brain in real time and see the neurochemicals in there, and if they kill the rat, they can sense sort of almost like a flood of DMT in the rat's brain. So it's been posited that these kind of near-death experiences are due to a flooding of the brain via DMT. And DMT is also useful in the body because it's useful in hypoxia, when someone is suffocating essentially, or having a stroke and there's not enough oxygen getting there. DMT helps protect the cells from dying. So one school of thought is dimethyltryptamine is involved in the psychotic process. Often someone going through these psychotic manic experiences or episodes, which can be quite prolonged, it's not sleeping because your body is producing lots of its own stimulants, which are it's like doing a speed bender or coke bender for a week, or a meth bender, but your body's making all that. So there are these stimulants the body can make, which are obviously being released and making your pupils big and making you manic, the false speech and everything, and the flights of ideas. And again, the kind of hallucinogenic endogenous chemicals for the psychotic experience. These are kind of hypotheses of mine. I'm still very much researching this. And probably I'm going to have to pull in things from disparate sources. I'm very interested in the work done around dimethyltryptamine and the DMTX studies that are going on, that started in Imperial College London under Professor David Nutt and Robin Carhart-Harris, where they're giving people DMT intravenously and they are having prolonged DMT experiences rather than just a quick 15-minute one from a hit on a pipe. In my kind of head at current, I have related a lot of my psychotic experiences to waking dreams. It's like when you haven't slept for so long that in my experience, my brain starts dreaming, and it starts dreaming of multiple dreams, like it will have a series of nightmares all at the same time. And if you're awake and conscious, you're almost acting this out. So it's like when you go to sleep, your body experiences paralysis to stop you, I think from when we were apes, to stop us falling out of trees while we're asleep. So we're kind of stay still when we're asleep, but obviously some people now move in the night, so maybe they were aquatic apes, I don't know. So again, this all comes from me trying to understand and frame my whole experience, really. I think there is, again, a huge interplay between trauma, bipolar, autism, ADHD, and the whole mind-body thing. just for another example, experienced meditators can affect their body in a way, so we know that kind of there is that interplay there, and the mind can certainly, well, is stress and things like that play a part in autoimmune disease as well. The body keeps the scores. Bessel van Valdekelt, I can't remember his name. Bessel van Valdekelt, I think, wrote that book. So yeah, that's kind of where I am at the moment. I haven't got any conclusions to share with this. But yeah, my experience of psychosis is a waking dream or waking nightmare. And my psychosis has always been brought about by extended cannabis use or using pure THC vapes as well. That's played a big part in what's happened to me. And I've had it both, and I've been incredibly stressed and ramped up my THC usage. That's kind of kicked something in because life's falling apart, or where life's falling apart and I stop using cannabis completely after heavy use, and then there's almost like this rebound REM, because if you're a chronic cannabis user, your body, your brain does not go into REM sleep as much, or if at all for some people. So when you stop smoking cannabis, a lot of people who've had tea breaks, as they call them, from cannabis, will have experienced a sort of rebound REM, where you have crazy dreams and night sweats and stuff, as your brain kind of almost catches up. It's like it gives you the dreams that you didn't have because you were smoking weed. They're all kind of kept in a big pot, and then here you go, you've stopped smoking weed, and boom, 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 you're going to have loads more dreams. And in the psychotic process, for me, I'm getting that while still awake. So I don't know if a sort of putting someone in a coma potentially in this instance would be one way of dealing with it, to sort of let the body and mind calm down. Keeping I don't know, trying to get them away from fear. One thing I've learned is fear has played such a part in all this, like things I've been scared of, or I'm subconsciously scared of, or was scared as a kid of, when I didn't even have kind of the mind to understand things. There's still those emotions kind of locked up somewhere in you. And if they're not processed and understood, they're there in the fertile soil to be ripped out during these experiences and manifested. And then you've got the whole kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, kind of synchronistic thinking almost, where your body's doing really fast free association with things. So it's pulling things out of the mind, connecting them all up in random ways, and then creating narratives, and that's playing into some sort of fear dream. But I don't know if there's any research into this, and I find it very frustrating. There doesn't seem to be kind of a generalised theory of what's going on. Maybe it is all very personal and it's different for everybody, but there must be some underlying mechanics going on with both mania and psychosis. Because when I am manic, I give lots of money away, or things away. But there is a part of my day-to-day character that is really generous. But it probably stems from under the surface feeling of unworthiness. I have too much of this, I don't deserve this, I need, to know what I mean, to give it all away. And then the thing that day-to-day inhibits that, because people are going to say, what are you doing giving all your stuff away? That inhibitor is then gone. So there's no kind of barrier to this stuff being done at that point. This is probably coming out quite rambly. But that's kind of the point I'm at the moment with this, in terms of understanding it. I don't know whether I'm gonna that's enough for me, and got enough of an understanding into my experiences now that I know that kind of dealing with fear in general and past fears is enough to sort of protect me from spinning out again, so to speak. I'm very careful with triggers now. I can feel when I'm emotionally overwhelmed and sort of approaching a meltdown or a shutdown. So I take time out and kind of allow myself to be okay. I don't overextend myself like I used to. I don't put the pressure on myself I used to, which has kept me sane and safe and continues to of late. But yeah, I would be very interested if anyone else has experienced, well, something like this and how they framed it themselves. And if any of what I'm saying resonates, if it's worth continuing sort of to research this. I did consider sort of taking up academic research in this area because I think it's quite novel. There's not a lot of money to be made by pharmaceutical companies approaching this thing in this angle, from this angle. It's kind of like you need psychotherapy or some sort of parts therapy, whether that be schema therapy or integrative family system or Jung's active imagination, to solve. There's lots of different constituent parts for this. There is literally the fractured self part. There's the underlying traumas that those have suffered, which have caused them to be frozen in time and repressed. So if you can heal them safely, there's no danger of them popping up and kind of making things go crazy. I mean, I've age regressed almost to being back to sort of primary school level at some time. It's like when these parts come online during these manic psychotic episodes, they're kind of like, your mind walks back along its timeline to find one of these parts who experienced a similar trauma and survived it, and pulls them up and says, right, you deal with this. And not often they're not fully formed people. They're not the same age as you. They haven't got the wisdom or the life experience. So in the present moment, they just make such a mess of things. They don't work. They keep you alive maybe, but it's like a child in an adult's body. So they can't solve the problem. And then the mind realises, okay, this one we've got from, 20 years ago, can't fix this. They can't fix this, what's going on now. Because, let's be honest, in my instance, it was unfixable at that point. But I need to fix it to stop the drive to self-annihilate. And I can't self-annihilate because I've got children and I can't abandon them. So there's that whole underlying paradox still. So this 22-year-old part can't fix this current situation with my wife and 2 children, the loss of my home and my life and my identity. So it's like you go back to bed then, or it doesn't go back to bed, it kind of stays half online, or fully online even. And then the mind traverses back. And the next part of me was 18, after another breakup that I obviously got completely, I don't know if it's autistically overwhelmed with emotionally. And then I enter a state of dissociation for a period. So I would have been in a state of dissociation from the age of 22 for a while I kind of, I don't know, until I kind of found someone else that I could let that loving part of me awaken with, because it wasn't safe to love someone because you can be so hurt. And again, at 18, I lost someone I loved. So that part of me got frozen, and I'm then existing from 18 to sort of 19 and a half in a state of semi-dissociation again. So the 22-year-old part of me that dealt with the loss of the woman, the child, the home, Not the life, because I still have my job then. Can't deal with the 40-odd-year-old version of the loss of the wife, the children, the identity, the pets, more than the 22-year-old even went through. So we've rewound to the 22-year-old and he can't cope. So I don't know if it's like a relay race where the 22-year-old passes the baton back to the 18-year-old. I don't understand yet how these parts are brought online. And I think there is a process there and we can understand it. Integrative family systems, which is kind of where you've got these internal models for people, like your mother, your father, the younger versions of you. And it encourages you, with the aid of a therapist, to dialogue with these parts. Often they will use props, like have a chair, that's the chair's the dad, talk to the chair like it's your dad, for instance. It just gives you something to kind of project on. If you have done any computer programming, it's kind of like, in the old days, you'd do something called rubber duck debugging, whereas if you had a software problem or something wasn't working, you'd talk to a rubber duck about what you're doing and what's gone wrong, and just the process of talking things through, you kind of go, and you reach the insight. So it's just like a prop. So the chair is the equivalent of a rubber duck to a programmer. But I still don't understand the coming online of these fractured parts. I don't know what you'd call them really. Maybe not fractured, dissociated parts. You can call them whatever you like, really. Semi-selves, other selves, or inner childs and inner adults. There's lots of different terminologies in these different therapeutic models. Schema therapy talks about firefighters and protectors and detached protectors, but that's quite different. I mean, a detached protector is someone who kind of drinks alcohol or smokes weed to stop you being emotionally overwhelmed with something. And then there's the concept of exiles as well. So I kind of like that. Well, it hasn't been exiled, has it? Or maybe it has. It's been exiled because at 22, you wanted to fucking kill yourself because you'd just lost everything you ever dreamed of, or everything you never dreamed you'd have. And you were silly enough to sort of imagine a future in your head. And my God, why did you start dreaming? Because we never dream because things always go wrong. So we won't do that again. We'll just live in the moment, kind of just focus on the past and not making the same mistakes again. I don't know. So that part of you gets, it's like you have to shut yourself away because your heart's breaking too much. Kind of to get poetic about it. You self-abandon. You like turn your back on yourself because it's like you poor sad romantic. It's just like, I can't help you, so I need to leave you. So that part of you is rejected. So I suppose it is an exile, as they call them. I can't remember I think that's schema therapy. No, I might be integrative family systems, I'm not sure. But if you want to read more about it, there's a book called The Haunted Self, which is written by the sort of free world experts in structural dissociation. And they use the term of AMPs, apparently normal parts, and EPs, emotional parts. So these, in that framing, would be emotional parts. And you could have multiple ANPs as well, which are your kind of day-to-day functioning version, which should have been the 22-year-old post-breakup dissociated version of me. I was going to work and everything. But I actually went blind at work and got rushed to hospital. So the emotion, even though I'd locked it away from me, had kind of affected me physiologically. And I think the loss of even the potential child I didn't get to have broke something in me back then when I was 22. And then having my own children kind of reopened that wound, and that's when I got Crohn's disease. It's like I needed to go, I don't know, to psychotherapy or to have learnt about active imagination, or which is something you can use on your own. to do this work and explore yourself, once you identify these parts, I'm not going to call them exiles anymore, again, because I think that's the wrong framing. That's pushing these things away, like there's something wrong with you. You were weak, you were broken. It's like, no, you did the best you could, young me at that age, with what had happened to you and your worldview that was formed by growing up in a messed up, pretty broken, not a broken home, but it was intact, but it was full of cracks in many ways. And lots of us have been there. That's why we're here, kind of. And we've got the genes as well, the epigenetics. Traumatized people passed on trauma-related genes to their children. They're expressed in the sperm. I don't know how it works with the eggs. I haven't looked into this that much, that side of it. But I'm fascinated by all this stuff. It's kind of a journey of self-discovery. It's a healing journey. And I don't know. It gives me hope and meaning, which is, I suppose is a very personal thing, isn't it? And I want to kind of befriend these parts of me. And integrate them all into me now at my age. I don't want to be them anymore. I just want to, well, maybe I do. There's parts of me that got locked up. Like this bit of you was what caused it to go wrong, so we're going to throw that in the bin or push that under the water. And when you've had repeated traumas, your mind tries to understand which bits of you caused the rejection or caused things to go wrong or caused you to be shamed, and gets as far away from them as it can. But I don't think any version of us in the past was bad, was it? Even if we've done terrible things, we all deserve kind of the prospect of redemption, don't we? Even from ourselves. I don't know. We need to be kind to these parts. I don't want to call them parts, really. Kind to our past selves. I don't know. And even as I'm talking about this, I can feel kind of things getting a bit sorted somewhere. It's weird, isn't it? But I do think about this a lot. I don't meditate on it per se, but I just sit with it and let these, I don't know, bits of me come up and talk to them. And like, it's okay, kind of. I get it. You were doing what you could. And yeah, you did screw up and you did say nasty things. And you did make people feel like shit with the things you said, and you did weaponize their insecurities against you because you grew up in a household where someone was doing that to someone else. It was just what was modelled to you. And you've got to this age now and you've realised kind of that was what was going on, and you've stopped doing that now. It's like you've learnt that lesson. So should you go back in time and find this version of you, this heartbroken, stuck in the mud version of you, and bash him round the head for that again? It's just like, no, if you can forgive yourself for something you've done, why would you go back into your past and attack yourself for the same thing? It just makes no sense, does it? So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And if any of this resonates, or you want to talk about it some more, or you'd like me to research or look into or share, or I don't know, I'll be led by you. I've always been a person who I was always jealous really of these people who always knew what they wanted to do when they were kids. It's like, I want to be a vet, so they can work out their whole plan to be a vet, and they can do it and it's fine. And I'm just like, I've literally got no idea, and I just amble from thing to thing, and opportunity presents itself, and you do this for a bit, and then it leads to this and that, which has been quite exciting because I've done all sorts of weird wonderful jobs, and had all sorts of cool experiences. So again, I shouldn't dislike that about me. So I suppose the overarching umbrella here for this episode is self-acceptance, isn't it? And I don't mean acceptance of you now. I mean acceptance for all of you. Everything you've been, and even everything you become. I don't know, but that's probably another one, isn't it? Forgiving your future self for mistakes you'll make, because that kind of gives you a free pass to just turn into a complete hedonist. But so maybe not. Be kind to tomorrow you. Yeah. And definitely be kind to yesterday you. See you next time. Much love.